And anything that allows you to go somewhere and see something recreated is a perfect place for an act out. So that's what these are good for.
Greetings, everyone. Come on in and have a seat up front to the Funny Muscle Podcast. If you're here, then you're looking to learn how to create laughs like a pro. So please help me welcome to the stage your co-host to help you do that, economics professor and open micer Chris Stifler and comedian turned author Mike Lucas.
Hey, man.
What's up, buddy?
I wonder if squirrels have this problem when they podcast. That's an unlikely scenario.
Oh, talking about unlike scenarios today. Well, let's dive right in then. Mike, I want to do an episode about some more deeper, harder part of your humor heightening devices, and I wanted to do the ones that you call breaking the norm. So I got your fine tuning your funny muscle in front of me.
Oh, nice. That's a good book to go through the heightening devices.
I'm looking at the chapter on breaking the norm devices, chapter 8,
Yes.
which you go through and you talk about unlikely scenarios, uncommon worlds, a timeline, and incongruent.
Yeah, the purpose of this book is to go through all 36 humor heightening devices. Well, there's a couple of purposes to the book, but one of the purposes is to go through all 36 humor heightening devices using the different uh, comics to have a example for them, and then also to use the same premise throughout there. And the premise is on weekends, my teenage daughter sleeps well past noon. That's not going to happen in my house. I told her, and I used that premise over and over and over again with these different humor heightening devices in order to see how they work. So that's just the basis of what this book is.
Yeah, so it's just like chock full of examples. So it's hard to learn when you explain like uncommon worlds is this and this, but when you start looking at like Chris Rock bit, which maybe we'll look at in a second, about a drug
Right.
dealer that's also an encyclopedia salesman, then you can really understand how these work.
Yeah, the unlikely scenarios and uncommon worlds typically work together. You typically have an uncommon world creating an unlikely scenario. Timeline and incongruent work together. Timeline is a way to break down a incident into its timely moments in a funny way. And incongruent just reverses that in some way. It shows you how to reverse or to mix up that timeline.
Okay, so like is incongruent like a lot of like Far Side comics? Or is incongruent basically dogs playing poker?
That's an unlikely scenario and an uncommon world. So an uncommon world is dogs is dogs playing poker. Or an uncommon world would be dogs being able to play something. And an unlikely scenario is dogs playing poker.
And are like uncommon, I'm trying in my head, is congruent like the overall topic? And then like unlikely scenarios and uncommon worlds are like kind of like a subcategory of what you'd call incongruent.
No, incongruent is just a mixed up timeline. When you go to incongruent in the book, let me go there real quick. It says it's funny when you can cleverly disrupt the anticipated order of things. To use the incongruent device, first you'll have to determine what the accepted pattern is by completing a timeline. That gives you the normal pattern that this setup follows. Your job in using the incongruent device is to consider what life would be like if any part of this common pattern were to somehow and unexpectedly change. Look at the timeline and decide how you would get to go against the normal pattern. Then create the scenario you would think might result from this changed pattern. It could be a big breakfast at the end of your workday, changing your pajamas at the start of the bus ride, a checkered flag in the middle of a race. To get laughs, use the incongruent device to twist up the expected way things will go. So that's like the drug dealer where he says this
You
rug.
want,
Go ahead.
yeah, you want to do the Chris Rock bit? We want to first analyze the Chris Rock bit that you have in the book.
We can do that. We can analyze that. I also have a incongruent joke by Bill Burr that he uses incongruency to get a laugh.
Okay, I have several by Attell and Michelle Wolf I brought.
Okay, let's go over all of them. So the first one
Cool.
is the Chris Rock bit. You want to read it?
Yeah, so it says, okay, Chris Rock, his in your humor heightening, sorry, in your blueprint, you always name the bit. So it's called drug dealers. And here he starts with the premise. The war on drugs is bullshit. Just a way to get more motherfuckers in jail. Drug dealers don't really sell drugs. Drugs sell themselves. Okay, is that the premise, right?
Yeah.
And so he says drugs sell themselves. Okay, it's crack. It's not an encyclopedia. And so there, do we have our entry into our incongruent world? Is that
Yeah, the congruency would be you sell it like an encyclopedia or a vacuum
Oh,
cleaner.
I see. And you're saying it's not an encyclopedia, so you're flipping it. You're
So you're
you're
saying
opposite of.
the timeline's going to be different.
It's not a vacuum cleaner. You don't really go to try to sell crack. I never heard of a crack dealer going, man, how am I going to get rid of all this crack?
Right? So his timeline normally is I purchase crack, I get crack, I sell crack, I get more crack. So the incongruency of that would be him saying, "Man, how am I going to get rid of all this crack?"
Okay, and then
So
he compares it. But is it an unlikely scenario as well? Like when you
yeah,
say it seems like unlikely scenario is always like you never see this. It's not like X. You never heard of a Y. Is that like
but this is likely because it's people doing crack and selling crack and buying crack and using crack. An unlikely scenario would be, what if dogs were crackheads? What if babies were crackheads?
okay?
What
Because this
if,
is like our what if Walter White was in a Civil War general?
yeah, that's an unlikely scenario.
Okay. But it seems like all these do they all kind of open up and act out later on in the bit?
Yeah, these are good act out heightening devices.
Okay. Because he even does the act out here. I've never heard a crack dealer going, man, how am I going to get rid of all this crack?
You never hear that. And he does it, man, how am I gonna get rid of all this crack? Like he does it like in the
Right.
voice of the guy.
He shifts his voice to do an act
Yeah,
out character.
into an act out
Yeah.
character. Yeah. Who knows if he calls that drug dealers? That's what I called it. We needed to name the bit, so I named it. But that's chances are he named it something different.
Right. Yeah. I was just following along with the
Exactly.
blueprint that you're
Yeah.
teaching me.
Exactly. So it's just an example. But to remember, these professionals are using multiple humor heightening devices at once. So that incongruency is just a small part of that bit. He's overstating the obvious. He's using recognition by saying drugs sell themselves. It's
Yep.
crack. It's not an encyclopedia. It's not a vacuum cleaner. Overstating the obvious, finding specifics. Those are metaphors too, in a way.
Direct comparison. Yeah. Yeah.
They're not metaphors for these.
Why do we find that funny? It's a little different than like a bait and switch or like a contrast where it's more of a surprise. Is it a surprise and misdirection, or is there something different at work compared to a bait and switch?
I think there's surprise in all of it. That's the whole point of comedy, is to surprise you with the how it comes together. So the surprise is the idea of crack being difficult to sell. Like that, the idea of that world existing is funny. It's surprising to think, oh yeah, you're right. Nobody lives in that world, in the world where crack is difficult to unload.
Are these devices that improv people like yourself really like because I mean, this is half improv, right? Give me two suggestions and then you kind of smash worlds.
Yeah, they're into like a frog bank. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's certain devices that lend themselves more to people like me who do act outs and who put voices to things. And anything that allows you to go somewhere and see something recreated is a perfect place for an act out. So that's what these are good for.
Okay, so this is the question I want to continue to ask you as we go through these bits. But like Chris Rock does a clever way of getting into the act out, right? He has a premise. He talks about the war
Yeah.
on drugs, and then you're suddenly in the act out. Like, but like you hear like open micers just say like, well, what if
Yeah.
Walter White was in the Civil War? Like, and then you're like almost like, why
But
why
that
did we
works
jump
too.
there?
But that works too. That is a less sophisticated version of the same device. Well, that one is
Okay.
a uncommon world, but unlikely scenario. But it still works because it's the device. It just works in a less sophisticated way. Somebody like Chris Rock shows that years of doing stand-up comedy allow you to find more hip ways to bring up things, whereas the more basic comedians who are starting out just bring it up.
Right. Okay. So I want to, as we go through these bits, I want to also highlight the cleverness of their entry into the uncommon world, or the entry into the act out.
Like, so for the examples I use for mine, for an incongruent joke, I just have one incongruent joke. On weekends, my teenage daughter sleeps well past noon. That's not going to happen in my house. I told her that next Saturday, her mother and I are sleeping in while she makes a big breakfast and nobody's awake to eat. So that's
So you took the
so now instead of we wake up, my wife and I make a dinner or a breakfast and feed the family. This time, my wife and I sleep in. She makes the breakfast, and then none of us eat it. Just so, and it shows her. It's funny because it's like, oh, now she gets what it feels like.
And that seems like it would enter into like your act out potential. Like
Right.
you shift to your daughter's voice and she's flipping bacon or whatever, and there's
Where is
pancakes
everybody?
going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not fair. You're lazy. You lazy bums. Oh, now we're the lazy ones, or whatever.
So as a young comic, how do you write an incongruent? Or do you ask yourself the same question, like what's the norm, or what's the normal timeline, or what's the normal like
Yeah, you
logical
gotta first
flow?
go through the timeline of the normal way and then go different. Or you have to just sense that it's normal and then different. Like here's an example of Bill Burr.
Notice black people have the genius to put the curse word after they say the race of the person, where white dudes, we always put it in front. And if we would just make that little adjustment, we could save so many careers, so many jobs could be saved in the white community if we would just put it after.
So he says, when black dudes talk about someone's race, they put the curse word after the race, whereas white guys put it beforehand. And if we would just make that one little switch, which is an incongruency.
That's a really good interest. It's a good premise intrigue too, because like he asserts something and we're like, okay, how's he going to prove this?
Right.
You never notice that in conversation? You hear a black guy being like, man, I was standing there, this Asian motherfucker came in, he starts talking about, you don't even hear it. You're just sitting there, oh, what did this Asian motherfucker do? I would love to hear the rest of this story, right? Dude, I would tell the exact same story, right? I'm standing there, right? This fucking Asian comes in, right? Everybody's all like, whoa, hey, easy, Jesus, dude. What year is it, you know?
So he did incongruently against the timeline that was acceptable.
The act out's really funny. Yeah, that's just all around great bit. The premise, the pause, the act out, the different voices.
Right. So that's an example of incongruency. And you've got the congruent way to do it, which is the way black people do it, and then the incongruent way that he does it, which is funny because it comes across as racist. And it's just something that he noticed.
Okay, so then dissect contrast versus incongruent. Is it because that seems to be a contrast?
There's also a contrast. There's also a contrast.
Okay.
Black people do it like this, white people do it like that. So he contrasted it using an incongruency.
Okay. It's like a nested incongruent inside a contrast. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of professional comics is they use multiple humor heightening devices at the same time. And it makes it more complicated, more unique, more original, more memorable, funnier.
Okay, then I think of the one I have pulled for incongruent, which should work. Let me see. And do we have a definition of all these? Can you define all the different ones? Like, is there an easy way to?
So it's funny when you can cleverly disrupt the anticipated order of things.
So let me see if this is incongruent or not. Then David Tell does a bit about. He says like, "Aren't we due another Bin Laden tape?" And he's like, Bin Laden is like the only criminal that before he does some criminal act, he sends out a tape about shit he's about to do.
Aren't we due another Bin Laden tape? He's a criminal, though. No other criminal does that. Puts out tapes about shit he's gonna do. Like in your own town, do you have a guy who just puts out tapes and then does shit? Hey, everybody, this is Earl. Yeah, the Pep Boys off of I-87 is going down next Thursday or Friday, depending when I can get a ride.
He's like, no one else does that. Do you have someone in your town that just sends out tapes of shit they're gonna do? And then he jumps into the act out. He says like, Hey, this is Earl. The Pep Boys off of I-87 is going down Thursday or Friday, depending on whether I can get a ride.
Yeah, and so you would do the timeline of blowing up a place, and then the incongruence part of it is now I'm going to alert with a tape first. And
Okay,
there's
so this is
a
the normal.
contrast in there too.
Okay, okay, let me reframe what I think you said. So the normal logical flow of a criminal is they're a criminal, they do something criminal, they do a crime, but they don't tell you about it.
They don't
And
tell
the
you what
idea
you're about to do. Yeah.
that
At
Bin
least
Laden actually
Dave Attell,
flips the order.
that's what's funny is it typical criminals don't do that.
I'm seeing the incongruent now a lot better. So Bin Laden is unique because he sends his video out before he does something.
Right, as opposed to afterwards taking credit for it.
And then his act out jumps to very, very, he goes from international terrorism or whatever to a goofy guy in Indiana or whatever.
Because he could have easily done just a timeline of uh someone like Bin Laden who does a teaser video, and he could make fun of the teaser video. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what's coming up. Just get Sunday, 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 or whatever. But he doesn't go that route. That's probably too typical for him.
Yeah, and the idea he flips it to a different scenario than of
Right.
a very low class white trash kind of Earl getting back at the Pep Boys. Okay.
Exactly. As possibly even a Pep Boys employee.
So his comic brain sees the fact that like that's weird. It's a weird thing to go,
Yeah.
and that's what comics brain's really good at is finding something that's weird. But is that a good way of trying to find a congruent joke? Is you ask what's weird about this?
I don't know. I don't know if that works every time. But incongruency is weird. It's considered a weird version of what's normally typical.
What's normally okay, then what's normally typical? Okay. So like I guess it's helpful to me to think like what's the logic flow, the normal logic.
Well, you just go what's the normal timeline and then switch the timeline around. A timeline is where you just break something down into its elements of how it worked. Like so a
Okay.
timeline, in my example, I said divide the setup into basic chronological steps. Sometimes it can be funny when you break something down into more specific steps, which is what the timeline does. So like Haywood Banks does a song about toast, and he does a timeline. He says, I get up in the morning about 6 a.m., have a little jelly, have a little jam, take a piece of bread, put it in the slot, push down the lever, and the wires get hot. I get toast. Yeah, toast.
I get up in the morning about 6 a.m. Have a little jelly, have a little jam. Take a piece of bread, put it in the slot. Push down the lever and the wires get hot. I get toast. Yeah, toast!
And so he does that breakdown of how it goes, and that's funny. It's funny to hear his breakdown. So if now he could do something incongruent with that, but he doesn't. He just does a congruent timeline. Congruent
Okay,
meaning
right.
follows, properly.
Oh, that's okay. I see why you then in your book you introduced timeline and then didn't introduce congruent at the
Yeah.
end.
Incongruent.
Incongruent, sorry, yeah.
So then I say, on the weekends, my teenage daughter sleeps well past noon. That's not going to happen at my house. I told her in the next 5 minutes, I better see her open her eyes, sit up, get up, brush her teeth, change clothes, do chores, and eat breakfast. Otherwise, I'll find a bucket, fill it with water, raise it over my head, and then get clumsy next to her sleeping body.
I like that. I remember highlighting that line when I first read that book because you have to put the pieces together too, the clumsiness.
Right. And it's a contrast between what's going to happen, what better happen versus what will happen if it doesn't. And then there's a timeline in there.
Yeah, got it. But it wouldn't be as funny if you just said dump water on you.
Right.
Yes, I have to put the a bucket of water above your head clumsily and put
Right.
that together in your head. Okay.
Get clumsy next to her sleeping body. Yeah, so timeline and incongruent go hand in hand. And I don't know that anybody really sits there and breaks down the timeline and then goes incongruent with it. I think those incongruent ideas just happen for you. You're just like, what if I twist something up?
Okay. Or if I twist something up, what if I Okay. What if I change the logical order, or the logical step, or the logical timeline?
Right.
So like, if you like a Far Side comic or cartoon of a guy on a he's in a life raft. Like there's three people in a life raft. They're in the middle of the ocean, and he pulls out like a jar of like shredded glass and nails.
Whoops.
Is that unlikely scenario? Is that incongruent? Or why is that so funny?
Well, it forces us to put together the idea of like the worst person to have in a lifeboat, in a blow up lifeboat. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to examine that. I'd have to see what how that works. There's some incongruency to it because in a lifeboat scenario, nobody pulls out things that will destroy you.
Right, right. Okay.
So there's an incongruency to that. There's funny specifics to that because you're laughing at the glass and tacks. He's giving you funny specifics of what, oh my God, that's the worst thing. Sharp things would be one thing, but then to give you specific list of sharp things is even funnier.
Okay. How about this one? A New Yorker comic cartoon where like there's a side of a building, and so you can see the one guy walking this way. Like it's the scenario is two people walking their dogs, and they turn a corner and they run into each other, and all the stuff gets goofy. Their dogs get tangled with their leashes. But instead of dogs, the one guy's walking a bowling pins, and the other guy's walking a bowling ball on a leash.
So it's just unlikely scenario.
That's not an unlikely scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, but you understand it's a recognition of like the
The
dogs
dogs,
tangled up.
exactly. Yeah. It's an unlikely scenario. Is unlikely worlds usually take place in an unlikely scenario. So the unlikely worlds are there's a man walking a bowling ball and a man walking his bowling pins. And then the scenario of them coming together it's funny because we recognize that as the dogs coming. So that there's immediately going to be grief between those two entities.
Right. But there's also like the extra layer of like that. Well, they normally clash into each other, like on a
Yeah,
bowling alley.
exactly.
Yeah. Is there incongruent there or no?
Well, it's there's no incongruency because it's going to go exactly how it typically would go. If they walked away
Timeline.
friends, that would be incongruent.
Okay, so take the normal logic and then figure out.
Yeah, and don't forget you're also doing like visual cartoons, so there's different premises and different, like there's a visual premise. There's a recognition visually of the two people go walking their dogs down the street and they come to a corner. So that's the premise that you can just detect visually. But wait, it's not two dogs, it's a bowling ball and bowling pins. Oh, I get it. They're gonna clash. Ha 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 ha.
So like, is this incongruent or timeline? Last jobs numbers come out every first Friday of every month. And the jobs numbers sucked last month. And then Trump just fired the guy or the girl who runs the Bureau
Right.
of Labor Statistics because he was pissed off at jobs. And so, like, if the numbers they came out this morning, they were pretty shitty. Well, how would we do an incongruent? Trump fired the guy yesterday before the jobs numbers came out.
No, he gives the guy a raise. Like
So
that's what wouldn't happen.
oh, okay. You ask yourself what wouldn't happen in that.
Right.
In the okay.
He because what we expect to happen is he's gonna get fired again.
Oh God. Okay. 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 Got it. So it's flipped to the logic of the timeline. Okay.
Yeah. So the timeline would have him get fired before or right after the lousy job report. The incongruency would be like to give him a promotion or give him a raise.
Okay, so let me ask this
Why
one.
would you have him do that? Well, you would have to be making a point. What would the point?
Okay, yeah, I didn't have a full kick bit there. I was just trying to
Oh,
think of
okay,
something that
gotcha.
was in the news this morning, and I was trying to apply it. Let me ask you this one then. Attell has a bit about how he's like not. The premise is about fitness and how he's not fit and he doesn't jog, and he's like he shits on joggers because they're the ones that always find the dead body.
True.
And then he says, you never find a dead body at home when you're eating ice cream watching porno.
Right.
And then he jumps into the act out.
So my friends want me to start jogging. That's the way to lose weight. I'm not into jogging. Not because I'm against the jogging. It's just that joggers are always the ones that find the dead body. You never find a dead body when you're sitting at home eating ice cream watching porno, do you? I was changing porno tapes and I saw a foot. I dropped the lube and called the cops.
Yeah, that's a incongruent. Typically, if you do a timeline of what it's like to watch a porno, you don't find something like that happening. But in his case, it's incongruently happening, and it's an unlikely scenario.
Unlikely scenario as well, right? Because it feels like unlikely scenarios are a lot of times I find the same entry into them. It's like you either say it's not like, or you never see, or you never hear, or like it's like that's the diving board into like the act
It's
out
the
thing.
unlikely scenario, and then typically, if it's an unlikely scenario, there's some incongruency to it. They're tricky. They're high level devices to use, so they're not going to be as easy to apply. But they're just, once you get how to use them, they're fun devices to use. They're fun ways to manipulate the truth.
So when Attell says like it's really nice to have a cigarette after sex, you can't have sex and then turn over and say, "Hey, would you like a Skittle?"
Incongruent.
Is that incongruent? Okay, or is that unlikely? Well, I guess it's kind of the similar
Well,
vein.
no, that because it's two people doing it. You could say, when dogs fuck, do they offer each other a Skittle? Or that's an unlikely scenario.
Okay, so that one's more of an incongruent, but it's the same.
But it's the idea that it's happening differently than it normally happens.
Than it normally happens. The fish out of water type. That's why you call it breaking the norm devices in this chapter.
Right.
Weird mental collision is one of the words I took from your book. Fish out of water. Okay, break norms.
Yeah, like in the book, for Uncommon Worlds, I talk about Nimish Patel having liquor store swag. My dad had a liquor store. It was pretty interesting way to grow up. My parents didn't know what it was, that it wasn't okay to send me to school with liquor store merchandise. I would go to school with Budweiser t-shirts. I had a Bacardi rum backpack. On my 12th birthday, I got a Corona bicycle.
Outside of that, it was a pretty interesting way to grow up. Because like my parents didn't know it was not okay to send me to school with liquor store merchandise. Like I would go to school with like Budweiser t-shirts. I had a Bacardi rum backpack. On my 12th birthday, I got a Corona bicycle. I don't know why Corona made a bike. I guess like if you lost your license, but you still need to get to work. Corona had your back.
So he's talking about an unlikely scenario, which is a kid using liquor company swag.
Yes, and you see it in your head, like you see the scene in your head, right? The little second grader with a Bacardi shirt going to school.
Right.
Or Bacardi rum backpack.
And then for my joke, for that one, I said on weekends, my teenage daughter sleeps well past noon. That's not going to happen in my house. I told her I made an appointment at the zoo for her to fill in for the sloths. I told her to wake up in a whispered voice using my bullhorn. I told her I'm the house police and I'm ticketing you with a $50 an hour loitering fee. All of those are cute. None of those are going to get a huge laugh, but they're all unlikely scenarios. Sorry, uncommon worlds.
Common worlds. Okay, is a frog bank a type of uncommon world, or how do we situate when we say frog bank versus an uncommon world?
That's like an unlikely scenario, a frog bank. It's typically where you're combining two worlds that wouldn't likely be combined.
Okay, so it's
combine an uncommon world with the specifics of the setup. So like it's like playing Mad Lib. So unlikely scenarios is definitely like a frog bank. It's Bernie Mac's Sex in a Can. It's Brian Regan's Humans yelling unnecessarily the way dogs bark. Hey, hey, hey.
So if I said, okay, you can see why the next meeting in my calendar is about interest rates and job numbers today. But I'm going to Mad Lib these two. The Federal Reserve Chairman who controls interest rates, and Fergie, the singer for Black Eyed Peas. So if I said, like, what if Jerome Powell addressed the Federal Reserve like he was a singer for the Black Eyed Peas?
Yeah, then you would just replace Black Eyed Peas sayings and make them somehow financial.
Right. That's what. And then Fedalicious definition, fighting off inflation vicious.
Yeah.
Made a soft landing, my ambition with a rate hike premonition. That's what I wrote this morning.
Yeah.
Playing
And
off of like Fergie's Fergalicious.
right. But that would involve people understanding economics and people
Yeah.
understanding the Black Eyed Peas.
But again, it would seem hokey or hack to just say, what if the Federal Reserve Chairman rapped like Fergie?
But the more sophisticated way to go about it would be that there's certain rappers that make sense in a higher level, kind of thing.
And so you work a premise backward kind of.
Kind of, you could. Fergie is intelligent enough to be the financial da 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 da. Imagine Fergie giving the da 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 da.
And then that's not bad. Then you're right into the act
Yeah.
out, and then you get the laugh with the act out, and the recognition of the song Fergalicious
Right.
with inflation
But
vicious.
you would be going with more what most people would recognize, which would be Fergie, as opposed to the financial. Those would be sort of details that you would add in because of your knowledge, but they wouldn't be required. People would just recognize the funniness of adding a Fergie element to these very formal definitions.
And that's the incongruent. That's the weird contrast. Like
Yeah.
our brain likes the idea of something kind of like, hip hop rap based, but in like a stuffy
Right.
economic Federal Reserve financial room.
Something weird being brought down to earth.
Okay, cool. Let me send you this one. See if
Oh, Michelle Wolf.
Yeah, Michelle Wolf. So this is a bit, basically, she's going to jump into the uncommon worlds or unlikely scenarios about how, well, I'm going to ask you. So she applies basically a very spoiled millennial white woman, but they're going to be on the lifeboats of the Titanic.
And the white women of my generation, we have completely abandoned white men. We blame everything on you. Even though you pay our rent, we blame everything on you. We are the exact opposite of ride or die. We are ride and flee immediately. We're all Rose from the Titanic. We grabbed a door and we shoved a white man into the sea. Like, I'm literally freezing. I should say, I do like to do all my historical women as millennials. Like, it's just more fun to do history that way. Like, all the women on the Titanic would have been like, it's so annoying the boat sunk. Like, how do you not see an iceberg? That had to be the main discussion on all of the lifeboats, right? It was just a bunch of women being like, so you just didn't see it? Isn't that like literally his whole job? This is the most random ocean. I'm starving.
That's a different
That was-
perspective. That you're looking at the perspective of the women on the lifeboat of the Titanic, as opposed to the men who sunk the boat. So
Okay.
that's a different perspective with funny specifics.
So is that not unlikely scenario? Not really. I guess
No,
it
that's
actually
very
did
happen.
happen.
It happened.
Because
Yeah.
it did happen, right? Because the women were on, but what about the
But-
idea that she's kind of frog banking, or what's it called, anachronistically bringing back millennial kind of like
Yeah, Frog
annoying
Bank
slang?
with them, it becomes an unlikely scenario because those types of people weren't in that type of situation. So you're putting someone who's not likely in a situation. So that would be an unlikely scenario. So yeah, it would have elements of that too. It's funny.
I like her entry into the act out because
Yeah.
the brunt of the bit is the act out of the millennial sayings when we get a recognition laugh. But her entry in there is I like to do all my historical women as millennial white women, or
Right.
whatever, and jumps into the act out.
This is the most random ocean.
Right. So all those things are what would a white woman say? Not just a white woman, but a millennial who's focused on themselves only. And so there's a recognition laugh there. There's funny specifics. There's a different perspective.
Can you define just your unlikely scenarios for me?
Combine an uncommon world with specifics of the setup, like playing Mad Libs as a kid.
I find it easier just to think of these as it's not like. This is it's not like heightening device to me. It's you never see. It's not like you can use golf club in a football stadium. It's not like you can take this premise and apply it to this world.
Well, I guess that's a
You
different
ne
way to phrase it.
you never see a millennial woman in a gold mine, or like it's like that's easier to me.
But those are all unlikely scenarios.
Yeah. I think these are the easiest ones of the four we're talking about. These are in my head, they're the most clear.
Are you unclear with an unlikely scenario?
No, I think of the four we're talking about today. I think unlikely scenario is the one it's the more
Are you
I
the
don't know,
most clear with it? Oh, gotcha.
yeah, most clear with it because I know it's
And
the
yet
entry into
you
it
need
is
to rename it.
I need to rename. I just need to. Yeah, I renamed my unlikely scenario as take a situation and extend it to the absurd or that you never see.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can put that in your book.
But do the one, and I think the example of that one is so good is the homophobic vegan.
Let me get to that. Gianmarco Soresi, he says there are certain beliefs that just go together with other beliefs, right? Like there's no such thing as a sexist trans ally.
When I read your book, I read there's no such thing as. So in my head, I think of unlikely scenarios as there's no such thing as
Right.
heightening.
Yeah, those go together.
There's certain beliefs that just go together with other beliefs, right? Like there's no such thing as a sexist trans ally. I've never met anyone who's like, trans women are women and they belong in the kitchen. It's never happened. Not once.
It's never happened, not once. I think it would be fun to mix it up a little bit more. Like, wouldn't it be fun to have? So now he's playing a game.
I think it would be fun if we mix it up a little more. Like, wouldn't you love to meet like a homophobic vegan? Who's like, being gay is unnatural, now pass the tofurkey, homo. Or a polyamorous nun who's like the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost at the same time.
So now he's playing a frog bank.
Yeah, he really set up the game and played it 3 times.
Right. It's funny.
But the unlikely scenarios, yeah, he sets it off with there's no such thing as.
That's a good way to do it.
That's what I was trying to template it for like a young comic. If they wanted to try to write an unlikely scenario,
Yeah,
they could try to
a way to
in their notebook. Right. So I wrote, it's not like blank, blank, blank. You never see blank, blank, blank. What if blank, 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 blank?
Right. Yeah, those are good starter setups.
Or imagine if.
Yeah. Yeah, and those get old after a while. Like the clever comics try to bypass even those because we've heard those before. You're even suggesting a basic comic would use those to learn the device. So that means that it's common fodder. So we have to be careful of that. That's all. If you play the game well, it doesn't matter how you bring it up. I mean, it does. It's like at basketball. Like if you dunk the ball, it doesn't matter how you dunk the ball, but it does matter. There's fancy ways to dunk the ball, and there's basic ways to dunk the ball, and there's ways to just shoot the ball. So the higher level comedians have fancier ways to get this stuff done.
I was trying to think of some examples because I like to write these in my humor writing column. And even I thought I came up with a couple examples that we wrote in the last several months. Like when I said in my one column on the hiking in Scotland, and the one steep section of the trail is called the Devil's Staircase.
Right.
And so when I wrote, it's not like someone goes on a hike of a well-graded, easy path, and then they say, let's name it after Satan's glute workout.
Right.
Is that an unlikely scenario?
Yes.
I basically flip it. It's not like you're going to name something Devil's Staircase that's going to be easy.
Right. Exactly.
It's going to be a death march. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah. It's these are tricky to use. They're tricky to come up with. They're higher level devices. So you have to be a more advanced comic to make these work or even try them. They're ballsy to try, but they're big payoffs if you can get them to work.
Well, yeah, because they open up such a good act out potential.
Yeah.
That you're colliding 2 worlds with an incongruent and surprising. Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Right. There's always a lot going on. That's the thing about comedy. It's when you break it down, there's a lot going on. And a lot of it's very natural for comedians. They don't do this sort of mathematical reverse engineering of the bit. They have an idea and then they just keep hammering it until they get it right.
Yeah, you're
But
right.
if they understood the technical part of the humor heightening devices, I think that they could come to their final product a lot quicker. If you understand you're trying to make something incongruent, if you understand you're trying to demonstrate an uncommon world, doing it, doing something weird.
In the humor article you helped me with about when I got my Sawyer licensing to cut big trees in the wilderness, and I talked about the Wilderness Act of 1964. Was written by Congressman Cranky Carl Witherspoon, who had a traumatic college dorm room experience. His roommate Doug, who owned exactly one cassette tape, Don McLean's American Pie, which he played on repeat the entire semester. So if I set up like a weird scenario, and then, so later on, then he writes the Wilderness
It's an
Act
unlikely
as,
scenario, yeah.
and the definition of wilderness is like in which case he may temporarily trammel so long as the trammeling is not in a Chevy on the way to the levee because the levee was dry.
Right,
And so I've then called back the line from Don McLean's American Pie into the definition of federal wilderness.
right.
Is that Uncommon Worlds, or is that Unlikely Scenario, or is that a Frog
It's
Bank, or is it?
it's a frog bank, so it's an unlikely scenario using uncommon worlds.
Okay, so if by definition every Frog Bank an Unlikely Scenario.
Yeah,
Okay.
typically. Yeah, typically. And you're using an uncommon world in an unlikely scenario.
But then, like, so like, we even talk about in the one advice column we wrote together about, when you set the game up, play it 3 times. Like the
Yeah.
homophobic vegan and the polyamorous nun, he plays it 3 times.
Yeah.
But a lot of,
This makes
you
sense.
gave advice to young comics, they only play it once.
Yeah, they're looking for 3 times, and then the third one's going to break the chain. It's going to break and his third one has a threesome that he talks about between the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. So that sort of breaks the chain of the more typical examples he's given in the first two.
We wrote the Uncommon World, what if Walter White was a Civil War general? And then you wrote the joke, what was your joke?
I can't remember.
I get it. You're the one who knocks, Walter, but I'm the one using the latrine.
Right. I remember that one.
So is
Yeah.
that like an act out in an Uncommon World, right? And a recognition laugh to the
Yeah.
line from Breaking Bad.
Exactly. That's you just frog banking Walter White, Breaking Bad, and the Civil War. And those two worlds come together over and over again in that bit.
Yeah, I like this one. This is going to be a good 40-minute,
it's
again,
good
like
stuff.
master class on detailed drawing the X's and O's of the Chris Collinsworth and
Right.
the bits.
Yeah, it's interesting to break these bits down and look at how and I would love to interview those comics and ask them what their real thought process was when they were creating that bit. I bet I would almost guarantee you that it wasn't this. They weren't breaking it down according to humor heightening devices. I think the humor heightening devices are ways in the future to identify something that happened in the past and give it meaning for the rest of us. But for the person who did the bit, I don't think they think that way. That's my guess.
Yeah, I would agree.
I wish they thought that way. I wish everybody read my book and used my terms, but I don't think that's true.
Dude, I'm gonna learn. Like, I love your methodology because I'm a very straight, logical, step by step. Give me a template. Give me a sense into the bit as I'm learning it.
Yeah,
See
that's
Dick run or whatever.
right.
And let
That's
me.
what the book is for guys like you. Yeah, because there's some people that don't learn that way. There's some people that don't learn by reading books, so it's useless to have that book anyways. Well, the book is called Fine-Tuning Your Funny Muscle, how to practice creating laughs like a pro. I had to read it because I'd spent so long. And it's a great book in order to get a better understanding of the 36 humor heightening devices and how they're used in humor in every joke that you laugh at. That's what's funny is they're used in every single joke that you laugh at. There's some humor heightening devices that are there that create the laugh. All right, man. Talk soon. I'll shoot this.
Yeah.
Bye.